Welcome back. Now let's take a look at how the markets have performed thus far. It certainly was an interesting morning initially. A smidge of a rise in trade and shares, should I say, out in Asia initially for most parts of the morning, but unfortunately closing down around 0.5% down for the Hang Seng out in Hong Kong, slightly lower than as well for the Shanghai Composite in China, while the Nikkei index in Japan is 0.2% lower. So unfortunately, that negativity filtering through into the rest of the market. The more coronavirus cases we're seeing, particularly out in the United States and China, has certainly meant that investors are a little bit more worried that the economic recovery may not be long-standing. It may not be something that continues for the longevity, or rather sooner rather than later, should I say even. So the FTSE 100, the DAX, and even the CAC 40 out in France are all down this afternoon as well. So negativity when it comes to that. So all in red. It hasn't, however, filtered through into the local market. So we're seeing gains for South Africa on this front. The index, as you can tell there, even the Dow Jones Industrial up nearly 1%, with the gold index as well climbing there, or more than 1%. The financials, however, are the big faller today, around 3.3% down, with platinum stocks also 2.6%. Big fall for Telkom, though, throughout the day is one of the key stocks we're looking out for, as that has gone down nearly 4% as well then today in trade. Checking in then on the commodities front, well, gold and platinum have certainly done well. Those metals seemingly going up, more than 1.6% higher for platinum then, sitting at $818 a fine ounce, with gold just 0.25% higher, 1,747 points. Down, unfortunately, is the price of oil, only slightly, or should I say 0.5% really, nearly $42 a barrel there. And that price really, having seen a few comments really around the commitment to keep the supply cuts, the likes of Kazakhstan as well, saying that they will keep those production cuts in place for a little bit longer, does mean then that if you have those prices coming down or supply coming down, then you have prices going up. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem that they'll have a systemic or long-term plan with regards to cutting supply beyond particularly July or even August for that matter. So the price not necessarily being able to gain thus far this morning. Into the local currency then, a bit of weakness as well for the Rand, 1742 against the US dollar. Not much to write home about on that front, but weakness overall, 1952 as well for the euro, and 21 Rand 57 then for a British pound. Let's chat to Bright Kumalo then from Vestac Asset Management, who joins us as well then via Skype. Bright, it certainly has been a market that can clearly look towards some sort of opening, but unfortunately may have jumped the gun and is now getting to a point where it may need to retrace some of those steps. Is that what you're getting a sense of?
Yeah. I mean, South Africa, especially the local markets, we found ourselves in a very delicate situation where we are mostly a consumer-driven economy, and we need demand from consumers to pick this economy up. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Instead of people getting jobs and the economy recovering as a result, we're seeing people losing jobs and contributing even further to the lack of demand that we're seeing in terms of just purchases all across the spectrum in our economy. And now we've got, a lot of businesses announcing these retrenchments, which I'm sure we're going to go into. But the market somewhat is discounting some of that because it's not taking it into consideration, especially considering that we're in the middle of a pandemic, meaning it's going to be very tough for the government to raise any form of taxes from these businesses, and if people are losing their jobs, it means less pay taxes from employers as well. So it's going to be a very, very grim 2 to next 3 years going forward.
So do you reckon we're seeing then ourselves getting into a W sort of recovery when it comes to not just the market picture, but certainly the economic picture as well?
It's going to be probably a U-shaped one, if I'm being honest. But as my boss said, it will probably be a K-shaped recovery. The successful people carry on being successful, and the people who are not putting in their version in terms of putting in their bit in the economy, will see them, their earnings and skills, everything go back in the wrong direction. But on a more serious note, in terms of the recovery, yes, it will be U-shaped, meaning, we've been flat, going downwards for about the past 6 years in our market, and this bounce is merely a blip. It's not even a real bounce because it's still, continuing with the trend. It's not changing our trend. In the economy, same thing is happening. As long as that demand is basically muted and anemic, there's nothing that we're going to see in our economy because, on the production side, we're not really big exporters as compared to other big exporting countries like Germany or China or even America. So it's going to be, rough going, in terms of, looking at those things. And the only way to recover from all of that is by... the only way to recover from that is by actually seeing the government use these little resources that they have in terms of the tax collections that they have and investing it back into the real economy. I'm hearing a lot of, stimulus on the financial side. We don't need financial stimulus. We need, building of bridges, roads, things that will go back into the real economy and employ the average man on the street. Not me. Yeah,
the real economy is definitely it. You're quite right there. You're seeing that job loss, then those sort of elements happen with regards to the likes of Glencore, saying that they're looking to cut down when it comes to ferrochrome, for example. Their smelters there. Yes, it's COVID-19, but surely it's been an industry that they've struggled with for quite some time. So that joint venture between Merafe Resources now certainly on the balance.
Yeah, I mean, they usually make a lot of money from things like cobalt, copper, and coal. I guess the three C's. But that's where they've done exceptionally well as a business. But now you're seeing that, these three businesses are no longer doing as exceptionally well to cover the rest of the portfolio. So they have to shut down the rest of the portfolio for a bit until there's demand in terms of the price changing. Because there's, when there's oversupply, there's a problem. So you can control supply by not producing anything. So it helps somewhat in your business. But again, they will wait for those metal prices to reverse, and maybe they'll open up those plants those mines that they've shut down. But the biggest issue, the overhanging issue with Glencore, it's those Swiss authorities that are, allegedly investigating the alleged corruption relating to their operations in the DRC. So the DRC, that's where they get all their cobalt. So this is the money maker being investigated. And if they found any wrongdoing there, which I don't know, man, this is mining, there could be. I'm not saying there is. It could be a big issue for their share price and their shareholders.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's been a big issue for somebody's share price is Telkom today. Them coming out with a set of earnings, revenue only up 3%, headline earnings dissipating 66% today. Those severance packages certainly hurting. But is it just those one-off costs that you feel are hurting them? Or is it the fact that they're also not catching up really too well with their competitors?
Look, they've done exceptionally well in terms of catching up on the mobile side of things. I mean, this is a business that was non-existent about 3 years ago. You fast forward to today, they're generating on mobile alone over 12 billion rands, which was 12.6 billion rands is exceptional. I mean, those service revenues are amazing. I can't... to think that there was no business prior to this, whereas if they had just stuck to fixed line in terms of calls, I mean, that's down 22% to 8.7 billion. It's nothing. I mean, if you compare that to mobile, it's like twice. Mobile is twice as much as, their fixed line. So that was a great move in terms of management. You have to give it to them there. Another biggest announcement that has maybe moved the share price somewhat is that they're going to be cancelling the dividend policy, not the dividend policy, which was to, distribute about 60% of their earnings in dividends, because they're trying to raise those funds to have enough money to put aside for the imminent auctioning of the spectrum, right? And the likes of MTN and Vodacom, they've got enough cash in their balance sheets, for such things when the spectrum is eventually auctioned, which I don't know. It's been imminent for a very long time now. So I'm positive that it's happening because recently a lot of things have been happening on that front. But I feel like since we're in the middle of a pandemic, we might wait a bit longer. So yes, this business has proven itself in terms of a turnaround strategy. I mean, I remember the share price when it was at 11 bucks in 2012. It went all the way to 80 bucks, and I see it's back to a few rands now. But yeah, it's still doing much better than it did back in 2012.
Yeah, certainly is. It's just that share price that keeps on falling, unfortunately, but hopefully that will get picked up sooner rather than later. Bright Khumalo, thank you so much for the time, but appreciate it. He's from Vestact Asset Management. They're helping us unpack this market picture, a whole sea of indifference, if you want to call it that, at the very least. Let's come back with some more economic news then right after the short break. Do stay tuned.